Hello? 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 Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm here. playing games. I'm online. Today we're gonna be playing a game called Ghosts. Ghosts. But first, I have something special for Halloween. It'll be just 1 second. There we go. Put on my face. Okay, so pretty much all that I know about this is that it stars Christopher Lee. That is all that I know. Oh, and it's supposedly got something to do with ghost hunters, like the kind you see on TV. Let's go for it. Let me know if my audio levels are off. The very 90s.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Christopher Lee.
Hi, Christopher
Welcome
Lee.
to Ghosts.
Parapsychologist. Father John Nuttall. So, looks like it's got point and click controls. What is this? That creepy knocker.
Welcome to Hobbs Manor, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Please excuse me for calling you out at such a late hour.
No problem.
You had a pleasant journey. Mark
yeah.
my words, you have an eventful time ahead of you.
No?
Allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Dr. Marcus Grimalkin, and
Hey,
I've
Doc.
devoted my life to the study of the paranormal. It is time for me to decide once and for all whether ghosts are reality or fiction.
They're
I hope
fake,
that
dude.
you can help me to make this decision. My visit to Hobbs Manor, a house that is world famous for its ghostly activities, is the climax of my life's work. I came here to gather the evidence around me, the documents, films, and records that I have painstakingly collected over the years. Make use of the research material that you will find inside the house. You will have to look carefully for it, as objects in this house appear to gain a life of their own.
No
Use my
kidding.
findings to make your own decisions. If you join me on my quest, you may be rewarded with great knowledge, but be warned, you may not like everything that you find.
Well, I'll agree with that. Let's take out this desk first. What's this? Package. A bunch of stuff in it. Father John Nuttall. Udall? Whatever. What processes does the church go through to help someone who is disturbed by a haunting? What is the point of performing an exorcism? What happens during an exorcism? Are ghosts evil in any way? Oh, I guess these are selections. Oh, hey, Red Witch. Yeah, this is a avatar I created through Vroid Studio. Right now, the program that I'm using to sort of display it on the screen here is called VC Face. It's pretty good. Seems to work pretty well. Right, so let's see. Guess I can choose these.
Well, the
Oh,
first
it plays a
stage
little
is,
video.
I think,
That's
actually
cute.
talk with them. We need to ascertain whether some people are actually, this is putting it gently, some people are actually
Oh,
more
VC Face is
prone
like totally
to
free.
spiritual
I was looking at Luppet too, but like it seemed a little bit better, but definitely not $60 better. That's for sure.
myself, but I certainly wouldn't dismiss the idea of there being such things, obviously. So the first thing is really just to ascertain.
Oh yeah, you should. This is
what
really
is
really
actually
fun.
happening.
It's very fun to mess with.
And then, or wherever it's taking place, and thereafter then just to offer them a kind of stepped service almost. We wouldn't call in the bouncers, as it were, straight away. It'd be something quite gentle. If that wasn't working, then we'd probably progress to the next stage. And then the third stage would be when we really felt there was just an overwhelming presence, and probably a presence of evil, that we'd actually have to call in specifically a man, a priest, who is actually designated by the bishop within the area, perhaps of the diocese, who could actually, and is authorized to tackle that.
Okay, so what's the point of performing an exorcism then?
This is quite a different area to ghosts. We're talking about a rite of an exorcism, which is more to do with the presence of evil. And really the point of doing an exorcism is actually to make sure that that very presence of evil is actually driven out, whatever form it may actually appear in. So a little bit more radical than the way that we would actually treat with ghosts themselves. Perhaps I ought to point out as well that not everybody is actually permitted to do an exorcism. It's regarded as such a serious matter that a bishop in the diocese would actually appoint a man, normally a priest, to actually do the exorcism. It has to be, I actually talked with an exorcist a few years ago, it has to be somebody who is incredibly holy, because apparently part way
Oh yeah, super holy.
rite, which again I haven't witnessed myself, the demon, as it comes out of whatever it's in, is liable to shout the sins out of the man who's performing the exorcism. So
That sounds embarrassing.
be careful that one doesn't sort of trip into this lightly, otherwise all one's faults and sins are going to be broadcast around the place.
Oh yeah, and you wouldn't want that happening to a Catholic priest, I tell you that. So what happens during an exorcism?
There are two basic formats for an exorcism. One is used quite frequently where one is actually aware of something within all of us that's not quite right. Church calls that sin, if you like, but it's the same origin. We're talking about the very presence of something which isn't good. Again, if I could just illustrate that, I mean, this is quite a gentle little format.
where we would pray over an individual or a group of individuals and say something like, Father of mercy, you led the man born blind to the kingdom of light through the gift of faith in your Son. Free these from false values that surround and blind them. Set them firmly in your truth, children of the light forever. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
That's
It's more or
poem,
less what I
dude.
call an everyday situation, not that I use that every day. There is a second form, though, which is perhaps much, much more serious, and there we would eventually have to call in the designated man from the diocese who would be appointed by the bishop to actually do an exorcism. Now, I've never actually witnessed one, but I've spoken to an exorcist, and it normally has to be accompanied, in the case of the exorcist, by a lot of prayer and fasting, actually prior to the little ritual. In the actual ritual itself, again, there is prayer. There's usually the laying on of hands to actually expel the presence of evil, devil, demon, whatever we would want to call it. And then very often, nearly always, a sprinkling with holy water. The tie there with the use of holy water is to baptism, when we were actually made children of God. So it would be, if you like, to install the presence of God within that individual and to cast out any possible manifestation of evil. The only other little detail I think that probably needs to be added is that it can be, again I've gleaned this secondhand from the exorcist himself, can be quite a violent thing if
Oh yeah,
the
no kidding.
manifestation, the presence
I've
of
seen the
evil
movie.
is so strong. He said that having done this, which was done in a kind of an old-fashioned vestry with wrought iron windows or what have you round about the actual baptistry, he was actually hurled against the wrought iron. So
Oh, no
it was
shit.
quite a force, if you like, as the devil came out of the individual, and he was quite severely bruised afterwards. So again, it's not something to trip into lightly, and again, it's why somebody has to be designated by the bishop to do that.
Okay, so the question we all want answered. Are ghosts evil in any way?
No. I think if we went to the simple definition of a disembodied presence of somebody who died, we'd actually say a ghost is no more or no less than just simply something which is non-physical, non-material, can't actually touch. Although, again, some people have actually spoken to me of almost like a spine-chilling experience of having felt somebody or something pass by them. The hairs on their arms sort of stand up on end. Somebody actually described it as she felt that somebody had gone physically right through her, and it was just chilling. So I wouldn't say that ghosts are manifestations of evil. If we went one stage, if we took that as the bottom plateau, went one stage above that, we'd actually talk about poltergeists. A little bit more physical there. There you've got sort of things coming off pictures and things flying around rooms and what have you. But again, the general definition is more of a mischievous spirit and not actually wishing evil to happen to the other individual. And the third, and probably the most extreme case, we'd say, diametrically opposed to ghosts, is where one would need to think about exorcism, a positive manifestation of something which was evil or which wished to cause harm to another individual.
Hmm. There are little movies in this. That's kind of cute. Father John Nuttall is a Roman Catholic preach who preaches in the county of Surrey. He is fascinated by the subject of ghosts and has helped members of his parish in the past who have experienced hauntings. That's gives him the spooky nut. Ghosts and spirits in religion. The majority of faiths that are practiced by the population of the planet accept that spirits or ghosts of some form or another exist. These spirits may be in the form of angels, demons, gods, or devils, materializations of human emotions such as good, evil, and holiness. There has been a universal fascination with death for at least 50,000 years. Archaeological digs have resulted in experts believing that the Neanderthals painted their dead with pigments and dyes, indicating that they believed in life after death. The ancient Egyptians performed elaborate funeral rites on their dead and entombed them with possessions, food, clothing, and even boots that would ensure a comfortable passage in the afterlife. Very kind of them. I think that's all I'll read from that. Okay. What's this?
This diver's helmet belonged to Mr. Montague. He caught the bug for underwater exploration. Unfortunately,
It's a
a
serious
rather
bug.
large octopus caught him.
No, you don't say. Listen here. You got a little basement here. Oh my god. There's a computer within the computer. So many computer layers. Oh, so this is just like a glossary of all sorts of things. Hmm. This
This
baby.
fascinating piece of machinery was constructed
Oh, look.
in case we needed to be
It's the Ghostbuster.
with a terrifying entity of some sort. Because people often say to us, have you ever been frightened with what you're doing? We've
Look
never
at that
actually
fucking
been frightened,
thing.
but you never know. If we saw an entity, we could, in fact, literally, like the Ghostbusters, we could sort of, fire a
No, you said it.
and we might have an epileptic ghost if we did that. But it is a very real piece of machinery. Now,
Oh yeah, very real.
complicated, but
I
it's
believe you.
on the side of the machinery, we have here a GSR machine, galvanic skin response machine, which you hold in one hand, and if you see something that's frightening, you could sweat. You might not realize you were sweating, but there would be a response in the palm of your hand. This then emits a high-pitched buzz, and if you felt uncomfortable, you think, my God, people have reported a sinister presence there, but I don't actually see anything. You hold this, and if you began to feel uncomfortable, it would be responded, you get a sound here, and then if you wanted to, even though you couldn't see it with your physical eyes, you could nevertheless upset it with that. It's very difficult.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they'll be very scared of
to
that.
decide what is, as it were, subjective or objective. It's something that you think you're going to feel, or is there something really there? On one occasion we used it when there was something really there. We used it in a deserted church. We fired the beam of light at a swirling green, ominous mist, which exploded into trillions of glistening lights and rushed out of the door and disappeared. Now, we
Yeah,
saw
no
it,
kidding.
believe it or believe it not, that doesn't matter to me. But the fact is, it came in useful. We liked the machine, we developed it, and it's fun. But the galvanic skin response machine does help you to decide if you are actually physically responding to something. Now, there's a lot more that could be said, but it's probably beyond the scope of what we're recording just now.
Nice machine, dude. That's a spider. What's that? It's another image of the spider. This
This is a
doohickey.
little device that's designed to detect the charged ions in the air. Now these ions can be either negative or positive. Positive is usually bad. It gives people bad impressions of the atmosphere of a place. Negative
Oh yeah, I
is
hate
good.
positive
It
people.
makes people feel quite good. So an excess of positive ions in a room would cause people to feel it was unpleasant, spooky, a bad atmosphere and so on. So we will check that out using this piece of equipment to see if there's any sort of reason why people might be feeling bad about a place anyway. And it could be that a ghost has some form of ionising field that causes people to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Ionised air will glow.
You might want to check out your
Use this to
ionizing fields there, buddy.
looking around here, I'm afraid we're getting no unusual readings at all in this area where the ghost was seen. So at the moment, there is nothing untoward happening, unfortunately.
That sweater alone's gotta produce all sorts of ions.
What we have here is a wand sensor. It's a type of thermometer. And the useful thing about that is not only is it on a long lead so we can investigate temperatures physically, but because it has an illuminated digital readout, it's very useful for seeing even in the dark. And the change of temperature is noticed directly. Now, we can, if a report has been such as here, when a phantom has been seen under this particular beam, we can find out if the temperature change is associated with it, you see. It may or may not be. So we can look. Somebody said, there was something on this chair there. So we can actually leave it. Now, we can actually leave the thing, so we're not disturbing anything. We can go to where the readout is, even if it were in another room, because we can have the wire as long as we wish and see what's taking place at a distance. Good idea. So it's simple in essence, but it's the interpretation of the data that it gives us that is important, you see.
Sure, there's lots of things that we want to keep a distance from you, buddy. Stuff in these? Don't think there's an inventory system in this, so I can't pick that up. What's here? Oh, more videos. Sue Blackmore. Do you believe there is fraudulence involved in lab experiments?
That's a very difficult question, and I don't know the answer. I have been involved with a couple of cases where I suspected that fraud was involved, and even then I couldn't be absolutely sure that it was. There are very few experiments that reliably get good results. At the moment, the Ganzfeld experiments done by Charles Oniton in the States stand up as the most impressive laboratory results that there are. Now, I don't know how those came about. If those experiments have been done the way they are written up in the literature, then it looks as though they're due to psi, because they certainly couldn't be due to sensory leakage. But fraud is a very difficult one. You never can completely rule out fraud. However hard you try, there's always somebody who could come and cheat. Somebody who's designed the experiment can always see a way around it. Someone who's written the programs that run it can always see a way around it. It's very, very difficult to design a fraud-proof experiment. What makes that not important in most of science is that we have theories that get better and better and better, and a little bit of fraud along the way won't matter. The problem is in the realm of ghosts and psychic phenomena that we don't have good theories, and we're always relying on one great proof, and if that's fraudulent, the whole thing falls down. I think it's sad to say some of the most important psychic experiments have been fraudulent, like Sol's experiments in the 1940s. But as for all the ones today, I don't know.
Here's one from Rodney Mitchell. Ghostbusters UK. Rodney Mitchell describes Robo-Ghost. Oh, that's gotta be interesting.
What we have here is a computer system that is monitoring a number of sensors which are on the end of wires. So this is one of them which is nearby. This is a temperature sensor, a small, very sensitive sensor which is feeding information into the computer, which is then being recorded and displayed on the screen as a trace. Now if I grab hold of this, you'll see the temperature go up along that curve there.
Oh wow, no
As the
kidding.
temperature goes up, it's recorded and into the computer's memory, and we can take it off onto a floppy disk and then analyse the data at a later stage. And what is more, this machine will give a warning if any of the readings change fairly drastically. I don't know if it'll do it for me if I'm hot enough to get a significant effect. I don't think I am, but you can see the temperature fluctuating.
Very disappointing for something named Robo-Ghost. I was hoping for a robot ghost that fights crime. Better than a cop that fights crime. Ghosts and technology. It's all text. What's up with this projector? Maybe I can mess with this machine. Doesn't look like it. Okay. What's up with the wine? If they have any good wine. Eh. Let's go back up. Check out that. There's a room next to this, I think. Yeah. A little dining area. Oh, look, poison.
Justice is often blind, and there are some who would sooner take the law into their own hands than see a crime go unpunished. The case of Nell Cook, the servant of a canon of Canterbury Cathedral, plainly illustrates the dangers of setting oneself up as judge, jury, and executioner. Nell Cook tended house for the new canon of Canterbury Cathedral as best she could, and was rewarded for her diligence and devotion by deceit and gross impropriety. She had not always felt this way, and when the canon gave his first mass in the cathedral, she was suitably impressed by the character of her new employer. The old canon, who mercifully passed away after many years of ill health, was a kind but ineffectual cleric, more concerned with getting his meals on time than spreading the word of the Lord. Now, here before her, was clearly a man of passion, who had directed his considerable energies and charisma in the service of the church. And yet, there was something about the new canon, like the way he would never look her in the eye before he went to visit parishioners who had sought advice on spiritual matters, or his often extreme moodiness and irritability after returning from some of these calls. Nell put this down to his youth and passionate temperament, but she would soon find out the depths of his feelings. The canon was a man who kept odd hours, and it was difficult for Nell to arrange meals at set times. One evening, after watching the stew she had labored over all afternoon grow cold on the dresser, she decided to wait for him to come home so that she could broach
Big
the matter
mistake.
forthwith. Late that night, Nell was drifting in and out of sleep in the kitchen when she heard the scuffle of feet and whispered giggling from the drawing-room upstairs. She couldn't believe it was the canon. She crept up the stairs to catch a glimpse of the intruders, and was sickened to the stomach by the sight that greeted her eyes. The young canon, obviously inebriated, was on the settle, being very familiar with a young woman. But the real shock came
How
when the priest's
untoward.
companion turned around, revealing herself as none other than his own niece.
Gasp.
Nell could bear the scene no longer, and stole off to her own room to a fitful rest. In the morning, the niece was nowhere to be seen, and the canon seemed in particularly high spirits. His hypocrisy appalled Nell, and she had to take her leave with some feeble excuse about tending to something on the stove. In the kitchen, her sanctuary, Nell brooded over the night's events. She decided to bide her time, as this might be isolated indiscretion, not uncommon amongst men of the cloth. But deep down she feared the worst, and her instincts were soon borne out. The canon's niece started making more frequent calls on her uncle at his quarters, and their conduct together became more brazen and unforgivable. It was not something Nell could discuss with anyone else, so she resolved to deal with the matter herself. One evening, when she expected the canon's niece for dinner, she expressly made the priest his favorite meal, mutton pie, emptying a bottle of arsenic into the filling, and grimly smiling at the irony of it all. After serving the pie to them, Nell waited by the dining room
Look at her
door,
expression there.
wondering at the effects of her special repast. Nothing happened. After the meal, which seemed to go on forever, the canon congratulated her on an excellent dinner, as usual, and said that he and his niece would retire to the study where she would help him work on tomorrow's sermon. Nell hurried to the kitchen to check that she had used the right bottle, when she heard a cry from above, the study. The poison must be doing its mischief, and so Nell took her time responding to the desperate pleas for help. When she reached the room, she found the canon and his niece writhing on the floor in agony, foam the color of sage forming around their mouths, and their eyes wide with terror and supplication. But Nell simply watched them with a curious detachment, as if none of this was really happening, bade them good night, and retired to bed. Yet her awakening was violent, wresting her from a deep slumber. Upon opening her eyes, she saw a crowd of people in her room, all speaking in agitated tones, and the most vehement amongst them was the man now shaking her roughly by the shoulders. Still drowsy, Nell could not fathom what her assailant was babbling, but when he mentioned the poison, the hairs rose on the back of her neck, and she recalled her actions of the previous night. It all seemed like a dream. Now, fully roused, she attempted to explain, to defend herself, but those gathered in her room were well past listening and only sought vengeance for the slaying of their priest. Nell was dragged from bed and into the streets, where the people who had once been her friends and neighbors turned on her with a viciousness that was breathtaking. Stones caught her in the head and chest, forcing her to her knees, blood pouring freely from a gash on her cheek, and still it rained stones, pounding her into the ground, her arms uselessly hanging by her sides, and then succumbed to the darkness.
That's a pretty dark story, Christopher Lee.
On regaining consciousness, Nell found herself at the bottom of a deep pit, looking up at her tormentors, some of whom had shovels in their hands. She desperately tried to raise herself, railing against her attackers and accusing the priest of terrible sins, but their response to this blasphemy was a clump of earth that hit her hard in the face, filling her mouth and choking off her appeal. And then the next mound of dirt landed on her, and the next, until her body was covered by damp, cool soil. The last thing she saw through the clod of mud clinging to her cheeks was the poison bottle being thrown into the grave with her. And then the darkness truly closed in. Forever. The passage between the old infirmary cloister and the green court in Canterbury Cathedral is known as the Dark Entry, and Nell Cook's spirit is said to wander through this foreboding corridor, lamenting the injustice of her fate. It is also said that any who look upon the wretched apparition will soon taste death themselves.
Back to the story, Christopher Lee. What else is in here? Some pans. Oven. Sacks. Think. Gasp. What's on the table there? Gloves. Let's see this. What's in here? Ooh, now that's spooky. Very spooky. Lovely. Hmm. See. What's in here?
Remember the words of the Spirit.
Oh, you don't have a story about the little corkscrew there?
Are you sure you want to leave the house now?
Yeah, not quite yet. What else is in here? Oh, a creepy mask.
As you walk around Hobbs Manor, you will almost certainly find some portraits and films of experts like myself in the field of the paranormal. Tony Cornell has over 30 years' experience in the field of paranormal study and
Oh,
investigation.
no kidding.
He has developed a sophisticated ghost detecting machine called Spider, which travels with him to the hundreds of ghostly locations.
Oh, yeah, I saw that thing.
Dr. Susan Blackmore is a senior lecturer at the University of the West of England. She has a doctorate in parapsychology and has written widely on the subject. She was awarded the Distinguished Skeptics Award in California in 1991 and has been involved in the production of many television programs on the paranormal. Robin Furman is a trained psychologist and expert in the field of the paranormal. He founded Ghostbusters UK in 1984 and has since investigated hundreds of hauntings.
It had
Father
several
John Nuttall
legal suits,
is a
I
Roman
guess.
Catholic priest who preaches in the county of Surrey. He is fascinated by the subject of ghosts and has helped members of his parish in the past who have experienced hauntings.
It was a very strange texture for a vase to have.
It was on a Sunday morning, very warm, very hot, about 11 o'clock in the morning, and the group of people I was with went off for a walk, and I decided that I was going to play the trumpet. I was outside, I think I was playing Summertime or something like that, and quite suddenly I was terrified. I mean, I really was absolutely petrified. I was cold, I had shivers down my back, and I was so scared I ran into
But
the
yeah,
house.
the trumpet
I
does
didn't know
that to
why I was
people.
scared, I just was. What I realised was when I stopped playing, there was no sound at all, nothing. No birds, no pigeons, the trees weren't moving, none of the trees. Now in a forest, The chance of trees not being moved by wind is almost nil, but nothing was moved. There was no sound at all. That night, I was in bed. I don't know what time it was, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. It was quite late. And I woke up, and again I was absolutely terrified, and I couldn't breathe this time. I mean, I really couldn't breathe. I was, and that was it. But there was definitely something was getting at me that day. The two incidents just couldn't, especially the still trees. I mean, that's the thing. Still trees and no bird singing in a forest. But it was, well, if that wasn't being haunted, I don't know what was. You know, I mean, it's really quite a serious thing, which I'll never forget.
Oh, very haunting. Oh, wow. Does anything ever frighten you? Start with Robin Furman, the ghost hunter.
The case at the empty, haunted church, where the team and I went to look because we'd been told by various students and people that they'd seen figures moving in the gloom there. This particular church I didn't know existed, but when we went there, figures did move in the gloom. There were tombstones which had been disturbed. This strange mist filtered into the church. The atmosphere was intensely oppressive. That was probably the most frightening case that we actually went to.
Oh, spooky. Now, let's see, Tony Cornell, investigator.
Oh, there's one case I think that was interesting from the point of view that my fellow investigator and myself were somewhat scared. You get blasé about this, but we were in a house, an old house up in the Fens, north of Cambridge, and in a room that nobody would sleep in or live in, because they said funny things happened to that, and they were using it to store furniture. And when they put electricity in the house, they put everything else but in that one room. And we're in there, and sitting there, and we got all the other helpers, actual members of the University Society downstairs, doing a Ouija board, not to communicate, but to get everybody round. So that
Oh yeah, the Ouija board, I know about those.
Coming. We locked the door.
Use them to summon
from that
Ouija.
direction across the bare boards. And I'm saying to Alan, this is my friend, Alan, cut it out. He's saying, just cut it out yourself. I said, well, it's not me. And bang, 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 we've got 2 torches. And we're showing, I mean, we've known each other for years. I knew he wasn't doing it, he knew it. But it got quite scary because it's a thump, 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 you see. And the last thump was on a brass bedstead over my head. And I thought, wow, I don't like this. And Alan said the same, more or less the same thing. That people were making a noise downstairs, and we used that as an excuse to go down and tell them to keep quiet. We got to the door, and we forgot that we had put strings across there in case somebody was going to take us for a ride. We went through there and collided with that, came back, and as we came back, we heard a noise, and we swung our torches around, and we saw a chair going across the room and land bang on the wall.
Sounds like some Scooby-Doo shit, dude. Alright, and last, Sue Blackmore, skeptic.
Lots of things have frightened me, but not ghostly things. In the course of investigating supposedly haunted places, I've been down in cellars with no lights on and no torch, just hoping something will come out of the slimy walls. You know, I've slept in several bedrooms where I've been told, you know, no one slept there for 20 years, and I sort of go to bed and go to sleep, you know, wishing something spooky would come along. As a child, I can certainly remember seeing apparitional type things and being frightened. But nowadays, if I see something like that, I think, oh, there comes an apparition, or I think it's my own mind, so it's not remotely frightening. I'm quite happy to go to bed at night, see all kinds of things being created by my mind, and they don't spook me. So the answer is no, but of course it might happen. I might get a terrible shock and one day go to a haunted place and see that ghost that I so far don't believe in.
There's a lot of drawers. What's in there? There's a creepy little sound. Dr. Susan Blackmore is a senior lecturer at the University of the West of England. She was one of the first British people to be awarded a doctorate in parapsychology. It is written widely on the subject. She was awarded the Distinguished Skeptics Award in California in 1991 and has been involved in the production of many television programs on the paranormal. Tony Cornell has over 30 years' experience in the field of paranormal study and investigation. He has developed a sophisticated ghost detecting machine called Spider, Spontaneous Psychophysical Incident Data Electronic Recorder, which travels with him to the hundreds of ghostly locations that he investigates. That is a interesting name for your machine, dude. Okay. Let's see the videos. Tony Cornell talking about Tony Cornell's poltergeist experience.
Now, there's one case I think that was interesting from the point of view that my fellow investigator and myself were somewhat scared. You get blasé about this, but we were in a house, an old house up in the Fens, north of Cambridge, and in a room that nobody would sleep in or live in, because they said funny things happened to that, and they were using it to store furniture. And when they put electricity in the house, they put everything else but in that one room. And we're in there, and sitting there, and we got all the other helpers, actual members of the University Society downstairs, doing a Ouija board, not to communicate, but to get everybody round so that we could control them. And suddenly there's bumps and clumps coming. We locked the door from that direction across the bare boards. And I'm saying to Alan, my friend, Alan, cut it out. He's saying, cut it out yourself. I said, it's not me. And bang, 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 we've got 2 torches. And we're showing, I mean, we've known each other for years. I knew he wasn't doing it, he knew it. But it got quite scary because it's a thump, thump,
I think
thump,
this
thump,
is the
thump.
same video from before.
And the last thump was on a brass bedstead over my head. And I thought, wow, I don't like this. And Alan said the same, more or less the same thing. People were making a noise downstairs, and we used that as an excuse to go down and tell them to keep quiet. We got to the door, and we forgot that we had put strings across there in case somebody was going to take us for a ride.
Yeah, it
And
definitely
we went through
is.
there and collided with that, came back, and as we came back, we heard a noise, and we swung our torches around, and we saw a chair going across.
Yeah, we can skip that. Stu Blackmore's poltergeist experience.
One of the most interesting cases I investigated many years ago now was in an ordinary council house in North Bristol. I was called there because the family had been seeing strange lights in the sky, and the UFO group had started investigating it. But then odd things started to happen in their house. They were seeing strange things, they were hearing strange things, they saw the lights swinging when there was no one there. They heard somebody opening the front door, but there wasn't anybody there. The clock was jumping along the mantelpiece of its own accord when nobody touched it, and the television was changing channels spontaneously with nobody near it. So they called me in to try and find out what was happening. I found a very pleasant and interesting family. I got on fine. I went there a day a week for many weeks and sat there and watched. And of course nothing happened. And I got them to keep a diary, and I put various pieces of apparatus in there to detect what was going on, and nothing was detected at all. I put a sort of fraud
No kidding.
piece of apparatus there, and they didn't fall for that and commit any frauds, which meant that I could relax a bit about that. And then one day when I was sitting there, the clock jumped along the mantelpiece. And I thought, wow, you know, at last something psychic's happened. Amazing. So I wanted to find out, was this to do with the position on the mantelpiece? Would any clock in that position jump? Or was it something about the clock? Was the clock haunted or the place haunted? So I thought the best thing to do was replace that clock with another clock and take the jumping clock away to my house. So I got them to put another clock on the mantelpiece, and I took the jumping clock home to my desk, put it down on my desk, kept working, you know, day after day, and suddenly it went ch-ch, and I thought, ha, whatever this is, whether it's a ghost or something normal, it's in the clock. So I took it to a technician I knew who specializes in mending clocks, and he took it to bits. And he told me that it was a very cheap metal 1950s clock with a very heavy, old, dirty spring in it that was totally clogged up, he showed me, with muck and dirt and so on. And what happened was, you wind the spring tight, it all sticks together with this gooey stuff, and then as it unwinds, it sticks, and then jumps. And because the clock's so light and it was on a shiny tiled mantelpiece, it would actually move it a long way along. And that was the beginning of dismantling the story. It turned out that the television channels could be changed by various kinds of sounds, ultrasound, that could be produced by the rattling of a dog's chain, and often it happened when the dog was lying in front of the television, and other sounds as well could do it. We tried some out, and gradually the whole thing fell to pieces. Now I still don't know whether really the lights were swinging when nobody was there, as the people said. I never saw that happen, and I have only their word to go on. And that's how it's always been. Things I've been able to investigate have turned out to have a normal explanation, and a lot remains that I just don't know.
Okay, well, have you any explanation for the Rosenheim poltergeist case?
I think that's a very difficult and interesting case. I knew some of the people who were there, and everybody I talked to who'd been there came back with a totally different account of what had happened. What seems most interesting to me about that case is the telephone bills and the idea that you couldn't dial fast enough to get the speaking clock. But I've never been able to find out, although I have tried, to get a transcript of the phone bill or anything that would show me that was really true. As far as I'm concerned, from the investigations I've done, that remains a fascinating bit of hearsay that I haven't been able to track down. That's always how it is, and it's very frustrating, because maybe it's true and I'm wrong, but I can never seem to get hold of a bit of evidence that's really convincing.
Vicky Clark presently lives in student lodgings close to her college. Unexplained events have plagued her in the last
My
few
name is
months.
Vicky Clark. I moved in October, and about 3 weeks after that the event started to happen. I did have two other roommates, but they've both moved out now. One left the course and the other one's found other accommodation. So it's just me on my own now. There was one night, it was quite scary. There was us three girls that stay here, living here, and one of my roommates woke up because she'd heard banging around her head, and she got quite frightened about it, and then she felt something brush over her face. So I got up and turned the light on, and we said, look, there's nothing here, it's alright, you know, we're just being silly, because we were getting worried about it at this point. And so we all sort of calmed down, and we turned the light back off, and then I got into bed, and when I got into bed there was a toilet roll in my bed. I don't know quite how it got in there, but and then when I woke up in the morning, there was black, like, tarry stuff in my bed as well. It was on my pyjamas, and it was on the cover, and it was on the sheet, and it wasn't there when I got
hate
up
to
to
be
turn
the
light
one
on,
to
'cause
tell
I'd
you
never
this,
seen
but I
bed,
think
it
you
was
got
clean.
pranked.
So I don't know where that had come from either. And yeah, one day I went down to the toilet and I locked the door, and when I came back up, it had moved a chair all the way across the room to right behind the door. I mean, we tried to work out if someone could have done it, but no one could get their arm round the door to pull the chair in enough. Also, we had some pennies on top of a desk one day, and it just it flicked one and it spun on the floor and then settled down. And also bottles fall off the side, but they don't tip over, they land upright. Also, I went home for a week because I wasn't very well, and the girls next door said they heard a lot of noises coming from the room, but no one was in here because I'm the only one with the key now. No one's ever seen anything. It just seems to move things. We don't quite know why.
Spooky. Again with that noise. That's just the same thing again. Okay. I just wanted this to be a sort of test stream, so I think I'll leave it for now. I think this is a good place to stop, since it's like about 10 where I am. So thanks for anybody who stuck around. I'll be streaming for real probably tomorrow if I can do so. So thanks for being here. Going to leave now. Bye.